part 2 of dealing with completing the square. All the ones that we did last time all just had x squared. There was never a number in front. If there is a number in front, if there's a coefficient in front of your x squared term, we have to deal with that. So for instance, if we're doing number 9, to get rid of that 3 in front of the x squared, I'm going to go through and I'm going to divide all my terms by 3. Technically, I'm also dividing the 0 by 3, but it's not going to do anything. That's why I didn't write it. Different from factoring. Okay, I'm not factoring out a 3. I'm literally dividing it out. So once I get here, now it's basically like what we were doing on Friday. I look and I go, okay, let's see. What do I need to do here still? My x's still want to be on a side by themselves, which means that 4's got to move to the other side. But to move, it doesn't just become 4. I've got to do an opposite. Like why you're leaving blank spots. Because remember, once the x's are alone, we need to find that b divided by 2 value and then square it. So in here, and again, it's once you've actually divided through. Don't go back and use the negative 6. We're going to use the negative 2. So that's negative 1, and we're going to square it. And again, this value will always come out positive. So I'm adding 1 to each side. Once I've done that, once I've added my half b squared, I go to turn it into a binomial term. What's my binomial term going to look like? X minus 1. Because again, I just take the b divided by 2. The negative 1, put it in there. And then I can go back just to like what we were doing a couple of sections back. But again, there's things that can just sit there waiting to catch us off guard. There's 2 things I need to do over here. What would either of those be? Take an I out, because, here, I'll use my new one. Take an I out, okay? So that's going to go out front. What's going to go out front with my I? Plus or minus, because whenever we're factoring a quadratic, whenever we're solving, we're going to get 2 answers. And in this case, the 3 won't break down anymore, so I actually leave it there. But I'm not quite done because x isn't by itself. I've got to add that 1 over. But again, that just stays in front of my plus minus portion. Okay, I'm never going to try and combine those. The only way is if this completely breaks down. Okay? But that's the only difference between non-coefficient of 1 and coefficient of 1. You may have to divide at the very start to kind of get yourself a little bit of beginning of that. And then the other part, which luckily some of you may have figured out ahead of time here, if we're working in vertex form. Okay? So the reading is going to be a big portion of having this set. Because now, if I want vertex form, reminder, vertex form looks like this, where your vertex is the HK value. So that's the form we're going to work on getting this into. So there's parts of this that will still be the same, except now instead of the equals 0, we have an equals y. So here's how this works. My first step, I'm going to add that certain something to both sides. You're like, if the 11's still there, that's okay. Instead of vanquishing the 11 to the other side, we're just going to box it out with parentheses. So in vertex form, nothing gets moved at the start. We just put in a set of parentheses to kind of separate our x's from everything else. But that same step that we do to complete the square will be the same here. We're still going to take our b value. We're still going to divide it by 2. And we're still going to square it. And that's going to be the value that I add to both sides of the equation. And you'll start to see, oops, I already skipped that. I put steps 1 and 2 together. Okay. What's my perfect square binomial going to look like now? X minus 4. So I'm just going to steal it from here again. And you're like, ooh, we're close. Okay, these almost look the same now. Okay, well, 2 places. One, since this is x minus, this is just basically my b divided by 2. I can either look at it, whatever I do when I get b divided by 2 goes here, negative 4, or if I'm factoring this, what multiplies to positive 16 and adds to negative 8, negative 4 and negative 4. So you can get there either way. If the factoring way makes more sense to you, go ahead and look at it like a diamond when you're factoring. Otherwise, like I said, you can just steal it once you take your b value and divide it by 2. And my last step is going to be to get that 16 out of there. That's supposed to be y equals. And this actually allows me, if I wanted to graph this now, to go find my vertex without playing with the fancy negative b over 2a thing. What's my vertex going to be on this one? 4, negative 5. Again, it's the opposite of what's in with my x. Again, it's x minus h, so it's the opposite of what you see here for your x value. And the y stays the same. So both. So let's do the one below it. Let's do the one below it. Let's scooch this up a bit. It's a little more room to work with. So one more. Again, get my blank in there and separate my x terms from the rest. And then go back to our little game with b here. Again, don't forget to take the sign with. So I'm going to be adding 4 to both sides. And then again, it just becomes the part of simplifying it till we get to the end. So again, what's going to go in the quantity in my parentheses with x? X minus 2. Because not only do I see it here when I do my b divided by 2, but I also know that negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, and then negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. And then again, we just get the 4 back out of there away from my y. I've got my vertex formed. And what was that going to make my vertex equal to? 2, 4. Okay. So that preps you now for those last 3 in the assignment to kind of let you see how that's going to work. Yes, ma'am? Sure can. Pause this for a